John's body didn't like him anymore. First the melanoma, then the arrhythmia, and now the psoriatic arthritis. And yes, he forgot some things. Nothing important to him, just some things that seemed important to other people. At 81, he expected some parts of the wagon to be wearing out after all those miles. Even so, he was beginning to feel like the little Dutch boy at the dike. First one leak and then another, and John was running out of fingers. Yes, his body was giving up, but he wasn't. 81. Okay, so I'm 81, he thought to himself. So what? He'd been 72 when he and Helen had hiked up to Machu Picchu. After spending 45 years building a business from scratch up to an eventual 110 employees, he had just stepped off the board of directors the previous year. Now he was an emeritus, whatever that meant. He found himself the recipient of unwanted deference. Was he suddenly that old? Doors were being opened for him. People tried to give up their seats on the bus for him. Not so fast, he thought. Not so fast. John made the mistake of complaining about his problems to his kids. Pardon adult children, but when talking among themselves, these adult children chose to take his sharing as something more, perhaps a cry for help. Suddenly, John's future was on the family agenda. Helen would have just listened, patted his hand, and kissed him on his old bald head, all without a word. But she was gone now, and how empty the place seemed without her. Maybe John had shared that, too. Now his fate had fallen into the hands of a committee. His children were nice people, and they meant well, but it was at his expense. Then one Wednesday night, there they all were in his living room, and he listened to them tell him what was best for him, safest, most practical, the easiest, for him, of course. All of this logic eventually boiled down to a place, Mountain View, a community for people just like him, and close by they could visit when they got the time. Well, all right then. So, a week and a half later, instead of checking into Mountain View with his allotted box of keepsakes, John was on a plane to Myrtle Beach, $7,000 in cash wadded up in his pocket to stay off the Platinum Amex as long as he could. No return ticket, and blessedly, no one to meet him at the gate. His whole family would be at Mountain View later that day, waiting to see him after he had settled in. It had been a group decision, and the group would be there, except that John had told each of them that one of the others would be taking him there. In place of himself, he'd left a nice, polite note instructing his family not to worry. It read, "Don't call us, we'll call you." It was June, but it was still a little early in the season. The traffic wasn't too bad coming out of the Myrtle Beach jetport now. Lots of groups of guys like the die-hard golf crew that had been on the flight with him. Middle-aged adolescents dedicated to escaping their wives, families, and obligations. John chuckled just watching them. He was pleased he could book an oceanfront house at the last minute at this time of the year. There had been a sudden cancellation just before he'd called. The place was in a little complex of 10 houses called Portofino, too, in Surfside Beach. His house was 317C, a corner unit right on the ocean. 20 minutes after picking up his small bag at the luggage carousel, he was in a fire engine red Mustang convertible driving down Highway 17, indulging himself in a naughty smile at the thought of his no-show reception party back in Indiana.